Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line of the final score. Brian Hayes, Gord Miller, Tim Kurkjian of ESPN coming up here in a moment. We had a no-hitter in baseball today.
Yeah, a complete game no-hitter.
Yeah, it's funny how you have to say complete game now. Isn't that modern baseball? Like 15 years ago, someone says you have a no-hitter. Obviously, it's one guy that had a no-hitter.
You weren't pulling a guy in the ninth.
No, you never had to qualify that. Now, there seems to be more team thrown no-hitters than individual no-hitters, to the point where you legitimately have to ask, sorry, was that the Padres or Dylan Cease? Yeah. And it was Dylan Cease who threw one against the Nationals today.
114 pitches.
Good for them. They let him finish it out. Just had that with Paul Skeens a couple of weeks ago.
That's a tidy, like 104. That's not a Maddox, right? A Maddox is a complete game under 100 pitches.
Right. He'd throw one in like 89.
Yeah.
Just throw to contact, see you later. Doc would do that too. Halliday would have some games where he'd go a complete game, 102 pitches. And
Oral Hershiser was like that. Mm-hmm. He was the king of that, right?
Incredible.
Why throw 3 pitches to get it out when you throw 1?
Yeah, exactly. Pitch to contact.
But that's not the thing now.
No, it's not. You either strike out or you're worried if that contact makes contact, it's leaving the park, right? Because now guys, everyone hits for power or is attempting to hit for power. That was another thing about back in the day, not trying to, downplay the greatness of former horse pitchers, ace pitchers, but there'd be 2 or 3 guys in every lineup where you're like, this guy's not getting a hit off me. Or if he does, it's a broken bat single that finds a hole somewhere. Like you weren't afraid of a guy, the 8th hitter, 9th hitter, taking you deep. Like if you were Nolan Ryan, if you were Horshiser or something.
Especially the National League, right? Where every
that's another thing.
A pitcher.
That's a better example. Like is the 9th hitter was a pitcher
right
for 100 years. You're like, this guy's not touching me. Half the guys would go up there and they'd just sit there and pray you missed the strike zone so they could walk.
It's really changed. I remember doing the Expos and Whitey Herzog and the Cardinals came in. And Whitey Herzog was this great, cantankerous, old school baseball manager. And his thing was, what really bugged him was light hitters shaving their bat handle down to get more bat head speed to hit home runs. And what they were doing was grounding into double plays when their bat broke.
Right, exactly.
Right. And he's like, this guy's hitting like, 230. He's got 2 home runs. Like, why is he doing
He's not hitting a home run tonight.
But they all do. But now they all.
Well, exactly. Now, like you have an 8th or 9th hitter, you're expected to supply some power. Like you have to supply some power. It's just the nature of baseball right now. And that was always amazing. Like you knew the pitcher. Sometimes, remember in the playoffs or you get into September, cold weather, and the pitcher would wear a jacket?
Yeah.
Because he wanted to stay warm?
Yeah.
You're like, that guy's not even thinking of getting a hit here.
Yeah.
Like he's not even thinking about it.
I was at spring training one year with the Blue Jays, and Jimmy Key had to hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so apparently after the game, they said that the catcher, whoever it was, felt bad for him. Said, what do you want, Jimmy? Give me a fastball. So he swung and missed. Give me another one. Swung and missed. And he said, how about a changeup? Can't do that, Jimmy.
Give me anything I can possibly make contact on. But, Dylan Cease with a no-hitter today. Only the second no-hitter in Padres history.
Really?
Like, those are always unique statistics. Teams that have never had someone throw a perfect game or never throw, only. And then there's other teams. It's like hole-in-ones in golf where there's no rhyme or reason why someone might have 15 in their life.
Well,
why someone else would have 0.
I think Arnold Palmer had 16, and someone asked him one time if he was lucky, and he said, well, that is where I was aiming.
Yes, you were trying to hit it there.
But the one that gets me is the NHL one that kills me is New Jersey has never had a 50-goal scorer or a 100-point scorer.
You're kidding me.
No.
Never had 100 points.
Jack Hughes got 99 a couple of years ago.
So I'm willing to put some money on it that Hughes will break that record at some point.
Brian Giunta holds a franchise record for goals this year.
I guess that's how they were and how they were built and how they played. And yet they've won all those cups.
They've had great players, though. Like, that's not like they've had bad players. Like
right, but have they ever had offensive superstars on their team?
Patrick Elias was a great player.
Elias was a very good player.
He was an underappreciated great player.
Sure. So was Gomez was really good. Bobby Holik was really good.
They've had goal scorers there.
Not 50 goal scorers. Although Shanahan
no one cares about what people in New Jersey think.
What was that from?
That was I don't even remember the context on that. Really ignorant thing to say.
You do every once in a while. You do uncork an odd one.
I do sometimes decide to go out states. I usually go out a full state.
You have dislikes for certain areas.
Yes,
like
I do.
What are your top three? Like,
I got issues with New Jersey.
You like New Jersey,
I don't really know why that is, but I got problems with them. Florida sports fans, I've tuned them up a few times.
Okay.
Bad fans down there in Florida. Professional,
especially
sports.
South Florida, because they don't go a lot.
Awful. That's what I'm saying. Generally speaking, in Miami, it's terrible.
Yeah,
like it's terrible.
What else?
Sacramento's. They've taken a lot of heat over the years.
Wait a minute. Why do you have it in
I got a big problem. The capital of California, I hate it.
Why? Have you been there?
No, I haven't.
You've never been.
I just goof on the Kings forever, although they've been better recently.
Of all the things to not like, Sacramento.
It's more the Kings in general.
It's the most benign place.
Yeah, there's not much to it.
Okay.
I don't know. I just find it's
CFL,
easier to go.
I did CFL games in Sacramento.
In Sacramento?
The Sacramento Gold Miners.
There you go.
The CFL.
Okay. Well,
I'll give
maybe I changed my opinion
I'll give you a prize if you can name the other U.S.-based CFL teams later.
Maybe I changed my opinion on that then. Okay, I'm officially on board.
All right.
All right, so yeah, the Jays are in action. We were referencing this ESPN article where they were having conversations with anonymous executives throughout the league, and a number of rival execs believe that the Jays should trade Vladdy. Now, I'm assuming some of them want to acquire Vladdy, right? Like, I'm not going to put my name on this, but I think Ross Atkins should trade this guy, and maybe if you're going to trade him to us.
There might be some self-interest.
There could be some self-interest. To chat about that, joining us now here on the Maple Toyota Hotline, here is Tim Kurkjian of ESPN. How you doing, Tim?
I'm well, fellas. How you doing?
We're doing well. We're just referencing this article up on ESPN.com. Anonymous rival executives believe the Blue Jays should trade Vladdy. What do you make of that?
Well, I think you're right. Of course, who wouldn't want Vladimir Guerrero? He's a really good hitter. He's really hot right now. And a lot of teams need a middle-of-the-order bat, and he would fit with so many different teams. So, of course, people are going to say, yes, I think they should move him. Now, there's another look at this. The Blue Jays are obviously in trouble for making the playoffs. And I think that's the other way to look at it. If you're not going to make the playoffs and you need to do something to start to move forward, well, to get something, you got to give up something. And Vladdy is quite an expensive and really productive piece.
Yeah, and we've always paired the two together, Vladdy and Bo Bichette. Those two have been the pillars of this team for a long time, the faces of the organization. And yet this year, and I would say the last calendar year, there appears to be a split, partially because Bichette, his stats have been so poor. Now he's been injured. He's back on the IL. We don't know when he's going to return. Also, there's reports out there that maybe Bo would be open to a change, where it seems as if Vladdy's willing to say, at least publicly on the record, that he feels the opposite way. He wants to be a Blue Jay for a long, long time. Do you pair the two together when trying to determine what's going to happen with the future of this team, or do you separate them? And if so, is Vladdy higher on the pecking order in terms of what he means to this group and to their future?
Yes, I think Vladdy's higher on the pecking order because he's a more productive player, especially this year. Bo Bichette is not having a good year. I think he's hitting 224 or so. But I still pair them together. I still, when I look at the Blue Jays and think, well, are they going to contend? If they are, they're going to have both of these guys at their very, very best, because we all know this is not a good offensive team, and the only chance it has to really score runs is for both of those guys to be really good at the same time. So it's a very tricky spot the Blue Jays are in right now with those two guys. Ross Atkins came out, 3 weeks ago or so and says, we're not trading either one of them. It doesn't make sense. I totally understood it then. To some degree, I still understand it. But if you're not going to trade them, you have to start thinking about getting them signed long-term so you can at least show everyone this is who we are still building around.
So, Tim, I guess the question here around the Blue Jays is are they in tweak mode or are they in rebuild mode? And I guess it comes down to, what are they? In your mind, are the Blue Jays a good team having a really bad year? And if that's the case, do you see that they could be a contender next year without making major changes?
I think they're a really struggling team right now, especially offensively. And they haven't pitched nearly as well as I thought they would as opposed to last year. I think they still have a chance to contend, say, next year, but they have to swing the bats way better, and they have to go get some help because I just don't see with the way the club is put together right now, they're going to score enough runs to beat the Yankees, beat the Orioles, and beat some other really good teams right now in the American League. I mean, that's what they have to look at. That Central has really changed. The Astros are good again. The Rangers, you think, are going to get hot. Seattle can really pitch, even though they don't swing the bats at all. So, unlike the National League where all sorts of wild card spots are open, that's really not the case in the American League, and that's how the Blue Jays have to look at this. We've got 6 teams ahead of us for the last wild card spot. How are they going to pass them all at this point?
With Tim Kurkjian of ESPN, you mentioned the Yankees, and it's getting tense down there in New York, Tim, as I know you're aware. Aaron Boone lit up his group last night. The Mets just, took them out twice in a 2-game series. Now the Mets are the team in New York that everyone's kind of buzzing about, if that's possible, playing themselves back into a wild card spot. Based on what I'm seeing online, again, not a perfect science, but Yankee fans are losing their minds. Is that justified, in your opinion, based on what they're running out on the field every day and the way that they're playing?
Yeah, they played very, very poorly now for well over a month. And after the way they started, this is really surprising. But just look at their offense, fellas. It's Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, and then a bunch of guys that are in, serious offensive slumps at this point. And that great starting pitching that we saw for the last 2 months just hasn't been the same. Carlos Rodon was pretty good his last time out. Luis Gil's been good a couple times. They just haven't been the same pitchers that they were the first 2 months. So to me, this says the Yankees have to go get some help at the trade deadline. They need a starting pitcher. They need another maybe middle of the order hitter, or at least another hitter somewhere. They're still going to make the playoffs. I'm certain of that. But, with the Yankees, just making the playoffs isn't good enough anymore. You either have to win that division or be exceptionally dangerous when you get to October. And right now, this doesn't look like a team that could do a whole lot of damage in October.
So, Tim, we saw a complete game no-hitter today by Dylan Cease of the Padres, which is becoming a very rare thing. And, of course, we've talked about, a couple weeks ago, getting pulled in the 7th inning. And
Paul Skeens
getting pulled in the 7th inning. How happy are you, as a guy who's been around the game a long time, to see a complete game no-hitter?
Well, I think it's great. I don't think we challenge our starting pitchers enough these days. I think we've lost the value of the starting pitcher to some degree. And I think if you ask a lot of starting pitchers, they would much rather stay out there longer rather than get taken out when they did. Mike Schilt was going to take Dylan Cease out after 94 pitches, and he said, don't take me out. I want to finish this game. And I think a lot of pitchers have that mentality, but the industry will not allow them to have that mentality. The industry almost doesn't want to see greatness. Well, I'm so happy that Dylan Cease, who is young, strong, and has spectacular stuff, that somebody left him out there for 111 or whatever it was. You can throw 111, 115 pitches in a game and come back 5 days later. It's possible, and I think Dylan Cease is one guy that can do it. So I was happy to see that, yes.
Yeah, it was awesome. And the Paul Skeens situation, for me, was very disappointing. I mean, the next day he got announced as the starting pitcher for the National League at the All-Star game, which was obviously a big boost 24 hours later for him. But this kid has taken the league by storm. He's taken the sports world by storm. But based on, what you just said there, Tim, about, not challenging starting pitchers or allowing them to flourish, do you think it's possible for Skeens to build up a reputation that equals even what Verlander was 15 years ago, let alone what Nolan Ryan was at one point, or any of the all-time great arms? Like, can he build up his profile and his legacy based on the way they put restrictions on pitchers these days?
Well, it's really going to be hard to do that, even though his stuff is good enough to be the best pitcher in the game, which I think he is at the moment. Now, let's just go back to 1981. Again, that was a million years ago in baseball years. Fernando Valenzuela's first 8 starts that year, he completed all of them. He threw 5 shutouts. He gave up 4 earned runs in 72 innings. And that's sensational stuff. Now, people will say it wore him out. They wore him out as a 19-year-old. That's one reason his career didn't go longer. Maybe all of that is true. I would just like the Paul Skeens of the world and a few others to get pushed a little bit more, because Paul Skeens is 6'6", 235. He's 22 years old. He throws 100 miles an hour. He can do more than we're allowing him to do. But I understand if you're the Pirates and he's going to lead your team. He's going to lead your league for the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. You got to be careful with those first 12 starts or so. But yes, as an old man, I would have liked to have seen him try to complete one of those 2 no-hitters that he had in his first 11 starts.
With Tim Kurkjian of ESPN, mentioned the Mets and how they were the laughing stock, really, of sports a few months ago. And, you know, the way things went for them last year and then them unloading all the money. And it was like, we got to get off certain arms. And Steve Cohen doesn't know what he's doing. And then all of a sudden the Mets, you know, start running off all these wins and they have a plus run differential. They're up to 53 and 48 on the season. They just took 2 games against the Yankees and they're sitting in a wild card spot. Are you a believer that this is legitimate and the Mets can actually pull this off?
Yes, I think the Mets can make the playoffs, and I would have never considered that at the end of May. They had one of the worst Mays that any team in recent years, at least a semi-good team, has had, and then they've been arguably as good as any team in baseball since the end of May. The beauty of the sport. How can any team be that bad for a month and be that good since? Well, Francisco Lindor in the leadoff spot has changed the offense. He's been a really good player. Francisco Alvarez came back behind the plate. He changes a lot. Pete Alonso looks like a really good hitter again. Brandon Nimmo. And they pitched a little bit better, too. So, yes, they are in the playoffs. At the moment, I think they have a real shot to make it, and it's not out of the question. It's not even close to being out of the question. They could pass the Braves and win the first wild card spot if the Braves, with all their injuries, don't start to play a little bit better.
Pretty incredible stuff, and we still have the trade deadline in less than a week, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of action between now and then a lot of games down the stretch. You'll be all over it like you always are. We always appreciate you finding time for us. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, fellas, see you.
There's Tim Kurkjian of ESPN.
And the lesson in the Mets is something that we should pay attention to, is to not shovel dirt on people too soon. Because you know how it is in our business, right? People, the bosses, they want declarative statements. They want you to get out there and have hot takes and this is great, this is terrible, winners and losers, all that. Things change, man. Things
do change. And now, this is an extreme change.
It is, but, I mean, now all the people calling these guys morons and this guy can't play and that guy can't,
Well, they had Verlander and Scherzer on their staff at one point.
Yeah.
And they were paying them both over $40 million a year.
I think they're paying them now $15 million not to pitch.
Yes, that's right. To move on, to go win elsewhere. Verlander, pretty sure he won in Houston a couple of years ago, and Scherzer won with Texas.
Yeah.
Like, we brought you in to win the World Series, but we'll pay you to go win one somewhere else.
Yeah. We'll pay you to pitch.
Crazy.
We'll pay you to pitch against us.
Go pitch somewhere else and win for them, not for us.
But I do think it's, and I have battles with guys here, at the trade deadline and on free agency, who won and who lost. How can you possibly know?
It's obviously incredibly difficult to do that. Yet there's also the other side of the coin. Like, the sellers can be winners, right? If they if they declared a pathway.
Baltimore,
yes,
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And maybe the Jays will do that.
And I would even say, to a lesser extent, the Red Sox. Maybe coming around, after their sort of controversial...
Well, they traded Mookie Betts, and
the Mookie Betts
the rest is history. But, yeah, they're in a hunt. They're a game back of a wild card spot right now. They're only 4.5 back of the Yankees. Kurkjian's still convinced that the Yankees will make the playoffs, and I think that's a safe bet, but...
They're still the best. Still the best record in the American League.
No, Baltimore's ahead of them. Baltimore, they're in a wild card spot. Baltimore's sitting atop the AL East, and you got Houston, who's been red hot. Like, listen, the Yankees are still a good team, but they have fallen off.
How to read the standings? Yeah, the Yankees are too back at ball.
The way they started the year, it seemed like a formality. They touch up on 100 wins and make the playoffs, and maybe end up as one of those.
They'll make it.
They probably will.
They're not going to play like this all year. Like now you're
probably not.
Now you're shoving dirt on the Yankees.
Yes, that I'm happy to do.
You don't like the Yankees.
Any chance I get.
You don't like the Yankees?
Well, this is what they did a couple of years ago. Remember, they were red hot out of the gate.
That's true, yeah.
Now, they did end up making the playoffs, and I think they got to the ALCS that year. So they did right the ship and get in, and it was all good. And guys that are slumping, like that are really, really struggling right now, eventually they'll come out of it to an extent. That's baseball. Guys, you have a 15, 20 game run that's just abysmal for some reason, and then it turns and you take off, and then it all balances out. If it balances out for the Yankees, they'll be fine.
Right.
But I'd like to see them fail.
Really?
I'd love to see that.
Who do you dislike the most? What team?
In baseball?
Just generally, which teams do you cheer to fail the most?
I don't know if I have one in particular.
Well, you're a Leaf fan, so who do you dislike? Montreal?
Yeah, again, it's weird. Like, the Leafs and Habs have never been on the same page really at the same time. Doesn't feel like they're ever both, it's an ebb or it's a flow. Like, they're both in different directions. Same thing with Ottawa, really post lockout, where Ottawa came out of that flying, and we know what happened with the Leafs. And now the last 6 or 7 years, the Leafs have been moving in a better direction. Ottawa's gone the opposite way.
See, I cut my teeth on the Edmonton-Calgary rivalry in the 80s.
Right.
When they were...
That's a rivalry.
So between 1983 and 1990, either the Oilers or the Flames were in the Stanley Cup final every year.
Mm-hmm.
And that was bitter, and it was 8 games a year.
And there was a payoff, right? Because, again, when the Flames won in 89, it's like, all right, it was worth it.
Yeah.
Because at least they got to win.
Yeah.
Where with taking the Leafs in Ottawa or even Montreal since '93, none of them have won.
So which teams do you cheer against? You probably don't like Dallas.
I don't. Like in football, I'm not like I really hate on the Vikings because the Vikings have been a pretty good team for a number of years. Like the Bears, I love goofing on the Bears because the Packers just beat the Bears all the time. Although I do fear that that's possibly going to come to an end soon. I think they're in a pretty good spot. Caleb Williams, I'm curious to see what he's got. First overall pick, though, talent. Like, if they get the quarterback position right, they'll push the Packers. But any of those teams in the NFC North, Detroit, again, the Packers have owned that division for so long. Yeah, it hasn't really been like a hateful thing. It's been more like who's going to catch up to the Packers and make it a push, where I think the Lions have done that now. The Vikings have done that at times in years past. The Bears have never really been on the same
It's interesting
level.
because I think you can cheer for your team and not hate others.
Yeah. I'm kind of like that. Like, I don't hate any team necessarily.
No. There are players that I don't especially like to deal with.
Sure. Well, and you have a very personal relationship because you're actually calling games and you're inside the ropes.
Yeah.
But for the average fan,
that's hard.
Probably
because
different.
It's hard. Like, I'll give you an example. Not a hockey one, but golf. Phil Mickelson was miserable to deal with for a very long time. So I covered the majors. I covered the U.S. Open, covered the Masters a little bit, and covered the British Open.
Mm-hmm.
And Mickelson was particularly unpleasant in 2000 when Tiger was just destroying everything. And part of it was he hadn't won a major yet, but there was this sort of public perception of him at the time was of this, he was well liked by the public.
Phil was.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
because he'd do the cheesy thumbs up and the hat tip.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff. So you didn't want to. So you had this kind of thing like, hey, what was Phil Mickelson like? Wasn't he awesome? Like, no. One of the worst ones was Carlton Fisk. Like, when I thought of Carlton Fisk, I thought of him waving the ball.
Yeah, of course. Really?
Oh, he tore me apart. I didn't realize he had a reputation for that.
Well, baseball always the reputation seemed to get out more in baseball. And I don't know why that is.
Because it's more daily interaction.
I guess maybe
it's a daily interaction.
Yeah, because there's been so many ball players over the years where it's gotten out. Well, that guy would snap all the time.
It's also an individual. It's an individual sport.
In many ways.
I was 18. I went down to California Angels spring training, and the Angels were going to play an exhibition game in Edmonton at Commonwealth Stadium. You can imagine that. And so they lined up Reggie Jackson for me to do the interviews.
Which Yes.
And
famously difficult.
And
to
Reggie,
deal with.
where are you from? Edmonton. F that, and just kept walking away. And like I'm 18. You just got to take it.
Yeah.
So that's a hard one because you don't want to ruin people's.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that it doesn't seem to get out as much in other sports that I'm aware. Like in baseball, I could name 4 or 5 different guys that I know of over the years that were infamously difficult.
And by the way, getting along with us is not a prerequisite. Like
it's not exactly.
But
I would say
treating people like crap.
That's fine.
Like Robbie Alomar treated everyone like crap.
Right.
He was brutal to the clubhouse staff. He was brutal to the media. He was brutal to fans.
George Bell had that reputation.
Yeah.
Like with the media and how tough it could be.
Well, but the way you treat your teammates and the people that the support staff says a lot about you.
Yeah, sure. But I will say that there was also like an other element to that in terms of the way writers were treated because of the Hall of Fame voting, where if you're a writer, you had a vote.
Yeah.
And the sanctimony of voters, this always drove me crazy.
How so?
That voters would hold it against players and say, "I'm not putting you in the Hall of Fame because you were mean to me." And I'm like, "What are you? The lobby police or something?
Yeah.
The hall monitor? Like, okay, the guy wasn't a good guy. Wasn't a good guy to you. That's not what you're voting on. You're voting on whether or not he could play the game."
So
that happened all the time for a long time. The guys that couldn't get in.
I don't care if you're a grumpy, grouchy, lousy guy. Don't pretend you're not. Like,
well,
don't pretend.
And there's some famous athletes that the cameras go on and it's, hey, there he is. How are you? The cameras go up, get lost, you loser.
Yeah. So
yeah, those are always the best.
Want to be a bad guy?
Right, is there a camera on this? Okay, I'll do that with a smile on. Hey, there he is, Gord. How you doing, right? No camera? You're an idiot.
Beat it.
Get out of here, scum. You're scum. Leave me alone. Yeah. But again, in terms of the voting into the Hall of Fame, like the fact that the guy was mean to you or something should not affect your ballot, but it did. It did for a lot of voters.
Now, I will say that Steve Carlton driving around from spring training site to spring training site asking for jobs did give me a little bit of.
What do you mean? How did that work?
After his career was over, he was trying to work.
Like in media or with teams?
Or teams, and like he had cheesed off everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So that
okay, so you wouldn't vote for him into the Hall of Fame?
No, I would vote for him. He's a Hall of Fame pitcher for sure. But when he wipes his feet on you and then is going around asking for favors.
But that happens a lot. Like different context in terms of there's a difference between treating people poorly and just being grumpy or not willing to like I look at a guy like John Tortorella. To use him as an example. Everyone I've talked to that have met him, they say he's a great guy. Like that, for the most part, that's what I've always heard. Great guy, easy to deal with, blah, blah, blah. Players that have played for him, he treated me well. It doesn't mean they love them all the time or that he'd play them, but treat them with respect. I've talked to a number of people. You'd love John Tortorella. And yet, he gets in these scrums and he snaps on people, and then he's out of a job and he's doing media.
Right.
And it's like, how does that work?
My beef with John is, and he's great company. I've had dinner with him. He's a wonderful person in that setting, is that he demands discipline from his players, calls them young, dumb players, everything else. He's the guy that got kicked out of a game for refusing to leave the bench for acting like a 5-year-old.
Right.
And he's the most undisciplined guy on the bench.
Oh, he snaps all the time.
But he's preaching discipline to other people.
Yeah. Oh, it was a bad look for him down the stretch. Yeah. Horrible. Yeah. Horrible.
So,
But I'm saying exactly, away from that, you go out and have a conversation. Hey, how's everything going?
Mike Keenan.
Sure,
Mike
exactly.
Keenan's great company.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Andy Petrillo coming up in about a half an hour. A little primer for the Olympic Games. Opening ceremony. Not ceremonies, Gord. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's opening ceremony.
And closing ceremonies.
That's right. I'm glad I
Thank you for
made sure you know that.
I appreciate that. Mr. Olympics here.
Yeah, exactly.
The King of the Rings.
Basically, Brian Williams. I'm just trying to get us through this.
What time is it?
1:30.
There you go.
Time check. We don't do that too often. That's the old school radio. 1:30, the old time check every 15 minutes. Andy's coming up in about a half an hour. 30 minutes from now.
We'll chat then.
Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel. Still to come. Andy Petrillo with a little Olympic primer in about a half an hour. Canada beating New Zealand today without drones, without Bev Priestman.
Yeah.
Canada beat New Zealand 2-1. this morning. So the women are off to a very good start, trying to defend the gold medal, right? They won gold in Tokyo. Bev Priestman is a big part of that. But
I'm assuming she'll be back to coach the next game.
She'll be back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that, FIFA and the IOC aren't going to do anything now. They let Canada play. So, But there's still an internal investigation going on, and there's going to be, I think, two primary questions that need to be answered. One is, who knew about this?
Think you'll ever get an answer on that? Like, doesn't it only matter does Bev Priestman know, or do you think people above her?
And over your phones. So I think I find it hard to now we don't know this, but I find it hard to believe that a lower level member of the staff took it upon themselves
right
to play
going
a drone
rogue on
practice.
that. No chance.
No. Now, do I believe an assistant coach would have authorized that on their own? No. I just don't. I don't think you do something that risky with the kind of consequences that could come with it without people knowing. And the second question is, how long has this been going on? If you spied on the 28th ranked team in the FIFA women's rankings, were you doing it to other teams? And remember when John Herdman took over the men's national team, Canada played Honduras. I think it was CONCACAF qualifying, and the Hondurans stopped their practice because they thought they saw a drone over their practice field. It was never determined whose it was or anything like that. But if you've done it once, how many other times? Twice, actually, because the COC acknowledged there were 2 incidents. But how many other times did it happen?
I don't know how you're going to review that or ever get an answer on that, unless there's someone within the organization that leaks it out. Hey, I've been working with them for 5 years. I'm telling you, we've done this every single time.
Or you say to someone, "You're
whistleblower.
If you won't answer, you're suspended for life."
Yeah, but you're not going to do that. How are you going to do that? You can't force someone, because what if it's the answer you don't want? What if they say no, nothing happened? Is that good enough? Like, I don't think you can threaten people with. Because you got to believe that the anxiety is pretty high right now anyway, because if you're Bev Priestman, if you know, you got to believe they're going to come. They're hunting, right? They're coming after to find out whether or not you knew. So are you going to say, yes, you knew? Because if you say, yes, you knew and you authorized it, you're probably gone immediately. Should be gone immediately. If you say no, is there a paper trail? Like you mentioned, hand over the phones. Who's going to text? Drone,
you'd be
good. Drone footage,
you'd be shocked.
FYI,
you'd be shocked.
I understand
trails people leave behind.
I understand that.
Let's get this straight.
Texting about drone coverage.
Let's start with this. They flew a drone over an Olympic venue days before the games were starting in a country that is on double red alert for suspicious activity. Like they were that reckless to do that. Who knows how reckless they were with other things.
Right.
Like the Patriots got caught spying.
Yeah.
Twice, right?
I believe it was multiple occasions, yeah.
I mean, Michigan. I mean, there's, the Astros. I mean, it tends to come out.
Generally, it does. Yeah, and I mean, the 2 coaches that were on the staff were sent home. I don't know what their futures are going to look like. I don't know if Bev Priestman will survive this or not. It's embarrassing for the country. I mean, there's no other way around it. You're cheating. Yeah. Like for the Olympic Games as well. Like it's not condoning it on a private professional level at all. But this is more extreme because you're representing the country. It's publicly funded.
You're not the Houston Astros.
No, exactly. Like again, that was cheating, and it was something that obviously should not have happened. Should have been very penalized, which in many cases it was. Players were let off the hook. But eventually, it came out and someone had to pay a price for that. This is different because, again, it's the national team. Like you're representing the country here, not just an owner in a city. Yeah. You're representing the country, and it's embarrassing.
Yeah, you're right.
So I don't know. I'm with you. I think you'd be very naive to believe that this was a rogue drone attack, that these 2 coaches went off on their own and decided to do this. And, because again, even if they did, and let's say it's happened multiple times, if they did, wouldn't you think Bev Priestman or someone else would say, how do you know that? Like, wait a minute, how would you know that they ran that exact tactic in practice if you were not in the stadium? Right. Or if you were not, privy to it? Like, who is your whistleblower within the New Zealand camp? Like, wouldn't you think there'd be some sort of filtering out process where you'd get to the bottom of how they found out the information they had? And you would think someone eventually would conclude, if they actually weren't involved, which again, I don't believe for a second that happened, you'd have to conclude, all right, something happened here where you're cheating, where you broke some sort of rule.
Yeah, and certainly they'd be aware. I mean, because spying in soccer is at a high level. I mean, because, set pieces, corner kicks, free kicks, even penalties. You practice penalties in your closed practice to know what players, patterns are.
Well, and another thing is, like, there's not how much game tape is there out there?
Right.
How much access do you have to your opponent? Now, New Zealand is not a team I would think we would be concerned with, and today would indicate that we shouldn't be. Canada beat New Zealand. We're a top 10 country in the world. New Zealand's not, never has been, and I think for a long, long time we've taken care of business against New Zealand. France is a different story. They're rated number 2 in the world. We're going to play them next. The Americans, that's another element to this that makes it that much more embarrassing, is that it was New Zealand.
Well, but
like, you're cheating against New Zealand.
And no evidence. Listen, I'm not making an accusation here, but if you spied on the 28th place team, wouldn't it?
Why would you stop there?
Why would you stop there?
Yes, exactly. Now, maybe you stop there now because you got caught.
Right.
But that's a good question. If they hadn't have been caught, what are the chances they were going to try it
Or were
again?
they already? Those teams are all practicing there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's possible
but
that could have been the case.
So when the Eagles played the Patriots in the Super Bowl, they were so convinced, the Eagles were, that the Patriots were spying on them, that they actually did a final walkthrough in a hotel ballroom.
And that was Nick Foles, right? Was that the Nick Foles Super Bowl?
The Philly play.
Yeah.
But they didn't do their final walkthrough in the stadium. They were so convinced.
Mm-hmm.
And don't forget, we live in a world now of pinhole cameras, like, tiny cameras and little drones and, all this micro technology. But yeah, they did their last walkthrough, I think, in the hotel ballroom.
Yeah, well, it worked out for them. They won the Super Bowl in the end. I don't know if it was going to matter anyway if Bill Belichick was sitting in the stadium or not.
But people as far back as the 70s were convinced that Al Davis was bugging the dressing room.
Sure, there's always been rumors like that, especially in the old arenas. And there's, certain things that teams do to mess with their opponents. It's not cheating, but it's maybe unethical.
Painting the visitors' dressing room right before the series starts.
Not allowing hot water, in their room or whatever it is.
Or even making the visitors' room tiny. Mm-hmm. Like making it really hard to...
Back in the day, that would happen with some arenas.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
The old Chicago Stadium was like the size of this.
Yeah. I think guys always said St. Louis was bad, Buffalo was bad, but now everything's cookie cutter. Every road team has access to everything you could ask for.
But it is, who knew about this? Is going to be
well, that's the question: is how much and again, once the Olympics come to an end, does the story die?
Well, no, because
there's great interest in it right now. Because
I know,
it's
but
the Olympic Games.
So let's look at this. What if this internal investigation, which goes on for months, finds out that this was going on for a long time and multiple people knew about it, and you let them compete in the Olympics?
Okay, does Canada want that to happen? What if Canada soccer, hypothetically speaking,
they've hired an outside third party?
Okay, but they still control that third party. Like, they control what they have access to. That happens all the time. We got a third party. Okay. That they don't have carte blanche to walk in and do anything they want. It's still something that you have personally decided to bring into the hen house.
I only know one.
You brought the wolf into the hen house.
I only know one third party investigator. Richard McLaren did the investigation of the Russian doping scandal and some other things.
Oh, do you think he had access to everything in Russia?
No, but he had access to everything here.
Okay, but exactly.
No, but Richard McLaren is not going in as a third-party investigator with handcuffs on.
That's fine. And
I don't think any reasonable third-party investigator would.
Really?
You're hired for a reason.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a ton of integrity in being a third-party investigator.
They're law firms for the most part.
Okay, and guess what they're getting? They're getting paid.
This is cynical you again.
It's very cynical.
You're very cynical.
But what do you? Okay, that's fine. You announce publicly, I don't have access to what I want. I'm leaving.
Right.
That could happen.
Yeah.
But there have been examples, I think, over the years of third parties saying, this is all we got. Not everyone cooperated.
There is that.
You can't force people to cooperate.
There is that. But if you ask for I'm assuming Soccer Canada gives people phones.
But even that is a scenario where it gets a bit sticky. And you're right. It could be if it's...
our phones are company property.
Sure, if it's company property, that's fine. And I guess if they have access to you and there's security there and they say, give me your phone. Now, if you call it in, say, can you bring it in? and it somehow ends up in the Don River.
Tom Brady.
That seems like exactly. Like if I'm Tom Brady was a great example because that was a private phone. He's like, I'm not giving you anything, nor should he. Why would he give Roger Goodell his personal cell phone? It was absurd to even ask for that.
Right.
He wasn't going to give him that.
But people don't realize.
But I guess what I'm getting to here is, let's say they find out, the third party finds out that during the Tokyo games there was shady business happening. You think they want that out publicly to the point where maybe that gold medal is, I don't know, is there an asterisk that comes with that? Is it rescinded? Is it taken away? Is it penalized? Does the IOC retroactively look back and say, you're no longer a gold medalist anymore? Do you want that as a Canadian?
I want the truth.
You want the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
You can't handle the truth. So you want that taken away from the athlete?
No, I'm not saying that.
Who had nothing to do with any of this stuff. You'd want them to possibly retroactively lose their gold medals.
I wouldn't say that, but I'd like to know. I think if it happened, I'd want to know.
Okay. And
what?
As a Canadian, I don't know. I mean, we know this now, and we know it beforehand.
Your ethics seem situational.
My ethics are straightforward. Okay, we have the answer now. Maybe Bev Priestman should be out of there. Maybe she shouldn't coach anymore. Maybe there should have been some sort of punitive action taken against Canada for the future. The past is a different story. Now, the truth is, a lot of it is, it's like taking the Heisman away from Reggie Bush. He still won the Heisman, right? Like the games, you know what I'm saying? Like Barry Bonds. Well, he's not really the guy who hit the most home runs. Yeah, actually he is.
Yeah,
he literally hit the most home runs. And Canada literally won the Olympic Games. Whether they have the gold or not, or you take it out of the record books.
I'm not saying you take the gold medal away, but I'm saying you'd like.
But it might come out of the record books. Like that's possible if they go that deep into it and find out that something shady was taking place. I doubt it too, and I hope that's not the case. But is it possible? You know, again, Reggie Bush is an example of that. They found out. It turns out he was getting some money and he shouldn't have been, and they retroactively. Now they give it back to him.
And now players are making $1 million. You know,
exactly, because they realize the absurdity of him getting free pizza costing him the Heisman or whatever it was. Anyway, all right, Andy Petrillo coming up. Andy's take on the win today by Canada. Little primer for the Olympic Games. We have the flag bearers, right? That'll be in the building tomorrow. I saw Steve Simmons tweeting out. Steve was reporting that the men's national, the basketball team, will not be in attendance.
Because they're playing the next day, right?
Because they're playing the next day, yet they're playing Greece, and Giannis is the flag bearer for Greece. So Giannis and the Greek basketball team will be there, but the men's basketball team will not be, which I guess is a personal decision. It doesn't affect anyone one way or the other. You'd think you'd want to be a part of that, though. Wouldn't you? Like, I'd be dying to be a part of the opening ceremony. I think that'd be incredible. Coming in with the country, rocking the Lululemon gear.
On boats?
Whatever it is.
They're going to be on boats in the Seine this year?
Is that what they're doing?
Part of it's, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. I didn't know that. I didn't know they were coming in on boats.
I think part of it's on the Seine. Yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, we'll see what Andy has to say about that as well. Andy Petrillo coming up in about 20 minutes. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel, still to come as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right. Andy Petrillo coming up in about 15 minutes. The Jays are getting waxed down at the Rogers Center to the point where Ernie Clement is on the mound for the Jays.
He just threw a 71-mile-an-hour pitch.
Yeah. It's troubling when you've got Ernie Clement up there. And this is, you got to wonder the psyche of the Rays because they probably just want to leave now.
Right.
Like, do you just
it's a stats game, right?
It is a stats game. Like, I would step in there and think, I'm going to take this guy.
Taking cuts.
Absolutely. I'm taking pitches.
You're working the count.
I'm working the count. I'm going to try to get his pitch count up. But at the same time, it's also a white flag. Like the Blue Jays are basically telling you, we're done. Can we just get out of here, please? There's 12-0 Rays. It's just so bad. It's so bad how awful this team is right now.
Well, I think
they've played all year.
I think it just went bad from the start, didn't it? Like it was just they just never got going.
No, exactly. Well, no hitter early in the season. We talk about a no hitter all the time.
Like the first week of the season.
Yeah, first week down in Houston, Blanco, no hitter. And, Blanco's kind of turned things around, but at the time, he was their fifth starter. I don't even know if he was in the rotation. I think he was only in the rotation because there were injuries coming out of camp for Houston. And, their bats have just never come alive. Their arms, they've had injury problems. And, I don't believe they're this bad. Like, I think they have enough talent to at least be hovering around 500. I don't think they're a playoff team, but
But when they're bad, baseball teams, I mean, it's so long. 162 games.
Every day you got to watch
every
it.
day, and it's like, when you broadcast a bad team, like it's, I remember doing
That's Gary Thorne a couple years ago.
I remember doing a Rays series against the Blue Jays right before the All-Star break, and I think Tampa at that time was like, they were like 22 games out of first place. This is before there was expanded playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like at the All-Star break.
Yeah. Oh, it's the worst. You got to watch it every single day.
I had arranged to talk to the Rays broadcaster like a week before, and I went to see him. He goes, I got nothing to tell you, man.
Yeah.
Like they'd lost 8 out of 9. Like,
right.
I got nothing.
Do yourself a favor and go home. Or just don't talk about them. Talk about the Jays. Don't even talk about the other team because it's so bad. And conversely, if you got a great team, it's awesome. You show up to the park every day. Like, these guys are red hot.
Oh, yeah.
Winning every day. It's amazing.
Full. The ballpark's full.
Place is buzzing. The city's buzzing. Like, it's such a Jekyll and Hyde scenario with a baseball team. And the Jays are, a perfect example of that right now. A couple of years ago, even last year, they won 89 games, made the playoffs. Frustrating team, but still they won a fair amount of ball games. This year, it's just been the complete opposite. They've never gotten up off the ground.
And it's probably not going to get better.
Not the rest of the way. No, exactly. Because they're going to trade pieces. Guys will get injured. Guys will, shut it down for the year, get surgery early, be prepared for next year. It's going to get uglier for sure. Final hour coming up. Andy Petrillo will join us to set up the Olympic Games. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.